There's a lot of discussion online about the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old who shot three rioters in self defense in Kenosha last year. I've watched and done a few debates about it on YouTube, but I really feel like it's very rare that anyone gives a detailed breakdown of what actually happened. The media, being the evil bastards that they are, only give us chopped up clips and put out leftist shills, lawyers, on TV who don't really know what they're talking about. This leads to people who believe they are certain about his innocence or guilt, while getting basic facts about the events wrong. I feel people shouldn't be so dangerously reckless with the real life of a real person if they know so little about what actually happened or the key details that would make or break the case in either direction. I'd like to try and cover every angle of this case in this video. I want to give a timeline of the events leading up to the incident, and then detailed information about what actually happened during the shootings. I want to show who the people involved were and their reasons for being at the riot, as well as the aftermath of the event. And finally, I want to give my thoughts on what happened and the reasons why I believe Kyle Rittenhouse is innocent. In July of 2020, an arrest warrant was put out for Jacob Blake for third-degree sexual assault, which is up to 5 years in prison, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and domestic abuse. This is important because it's what led to the initial incident that sparked the riots. On August 23rd of 2020, his girlfriend called the police around 5:11 p.m. She told officers that her boyfriend, Blake, was not allowed on the premises and he stole her car keys to prevent her from leaving.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
On the way to the home, police officers were told there was a domestic dispute and that Jacob Blake, the boyfriend, had a warrant out for his arrest. When officers tried to arrest Blake, he resisted and got into a scuffle with the police officers. Two officers tried to tase Blake, but the tasers had no effect. Blake would later admit on national television that after he broke free, he picked up his knife and walked to the front of the car with his girlfriend's children inside. As he attempted to steal the car with his girlfriend's children in the back, he shot 7 times in the back by a police officer. This was caught on video and immediately framed as a racist police shooting. On social media, the lie spread that Blake was shot for trying to break up a fight. Because of this, protests and riots erupted in the town of Kenosha, Wisconsin in the following days. According to the Kenosha Business Alliance, more than 100 buildings suffered damages, with 40 businesses being destroyed completely, totaling over $50 million in damages over the course of just 3 nights. The first night of the riots was August 23rd. On that night, three garbage trucks, a trolley car, and over 100 cars were set on fire. Multiple businesses on the west side of town were burned and looted by rioters. Buildings surrounding the Civic Center Park had their windows smashed in and vandalized, including a local high school for disadvantaged and troubled kids. A regular police officer who was not in riot gear was beaten unconscious with a brick by one of the rioters. The following day, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers activated the Wisconsin National Guard to try and protect vital infrastructure and firefighters fighting the blazes the rioters had started. They also closed off interstate entrances and exits to the city to try and prevent outside agitators from causing chaos. At around 8:30 p.m., rioters tore the door off its hinges in an attempt to breach the Kenosha Public Safety Building and the Kenosha Courthouse. As police fought back the mob, rioters lit fires around the building and threw explosives at police officers inside. Several more businesses, vehicles, streetlights, and now government buildings were set on fire or destroyed. Even people's homes and apartments were burned down by rioters as firefighters worked into the early morning to try and put out the fires around the city. Among the rioters terrorizing the town was Joseph Rosenbaum, Anthony Huber, and Gage Grosskreutz. Joseph Rosenbaum, according to the Washington Post, was a homeless man who was released from a mental hospital during the riots. He ended up in the mental hospital due to nearly dying of a drug overdose following him being arrested for domestic violence against his fiancee.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
This wasn't the first violent offense that Rosenbaum had committed. At age 18, he was arrested and imprisoned for 10 years for raping multiple children under the age of 13. While in jail, he committed 40 disciplinary infractions, including 12 violent offenses. Why we live in a society where violent, drugged up criminals are allowed to walk the streets a mere month after being arrested is beyond me. On day 3 of the riots, Joseph Rosenbaum can be seen among rioters in several videos. In one video, he can be seen screaming at armed citizens to shoot him while calling him a pro gamer word. In another video, Rosenbaum is seen pushing a dumpster fire towards a gas station before the fire being put out by a protester with a fire extinguisher. We'll come back to that later. Anthony Huber was a Kenosha man who also participated in the riots. His criminal history includes strangulation and suffocation of family member and domestic abuse. Basically, this story is he pulled a knife on his brother and threatened to gut him like a pig for not cleaning the house. He then strangled him for over 10 seconds and then ran away. After being convicted and put on probation for that assault, he would later commit domestic violence against his sister and get arrested again.
Stop breaking the law, asshole!
He spent time in jail from 2016 to 2019 for domestic abuse, drug abuse, and parole violation. He was allegedly a personal acquaintance of Jacob Blake, according to his girlfriend. She claimed that they used to do drugs together. When Blake was shot, apparently this noticeably affected Huber, and he decided to participate in the riots that destroyed so many lives in Kenosha. Gage Grosskreutz was a professional left wing protester from Milwaukee with a liberal arts degree in outdoor education. After the death of the holy martyr, St. George Floyd, he joined the far left extremist group, the People's Revolution, and became an active participant in protests and riots. According to him, he attended over 100 protests and riots in the past few months. Although he was convicted in 2016 for drunkenly possessing a firearm, his criminal history doesn't include the level of violence that the other two attackers had. Although he had been arrested in the nights prior for stalking police officers and prowling around the employee car lots at police stations. On day 3 of the riots, the Kenosha County Board sent a letter to the Wisconsin governor requesting 2,000 additional National Guard troops to quell the riots. Governor Evers sent 250 National Guard troops to Kenosha and erected a large fence outside the courthouse so rioters couldn't attempt to storm the building again, but the rioting continued. This night, however, there was something different. Dozens of citizens armed with rifles stood watch outside of businesses to warn rioters away from the stores they were standing by to protect. What I didn't mention before is that on night 2 of the rioting, a Facebook group was created called the Kenosha Guard, calling on citizens to take up arms and guard buildings around the town. Although the county sheriff said the armed citizens didn't help, police officers on scene were recorded thanking them, and it appeared there was much less destruction than in the 2 nights prior. One of the armed citizens to help stand guard was 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old boy living in the nearby village of Antioch, Illinois, a border town on Illinois and Wisconsin. Although there is no criminal record of Kyle Rittenhouse, there is video of him getting into a fight at school with some girls who were allegedly bullying his sister. Rittenhouse was a supporter of police officers, like most sane people and non criminals in the world, as shown in his social media posts backing the blue. Earlier that year, Rittenhouse used the money from his lifeguard job in Kenosha and his stimulus check to purchase a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 rifle that his friend would hold for him until his 18th birthday in January. Or so we thought. During the second night of rioting, Kyle Rittenhouse stayed at his friend's house in Kenosha. The following day, he went to the local high school that had been vandalized to try and help with the cleanup. On the evening of the third day of rioting, Rittenhouse joined the Kenosha Guard group and took his rifle to stand guard at businesses and offer medical assistance to people who were injured. Eventually, as police tried to contain the riot, Rittenhouse was separated from the rest of the armed citizens, and then the incident occurs. Although we won't know the full picture of what happened until the trial begins, here is what we can gather from available evidence. According to witness Richie McGinnis, Kyle Rittenhouse was walking down the road at around 11:45 p.m. when Joseph Rosenbaum, with a t-shirt covering his face, began chasing after him. Although nobody knows exactly what caused Rosenbaum to start chasing after Kyle, there is speculation that Kyle was confused for a man who stopped Rosenbaum from setting a gas station on fire earlier since they were wearing similar clothes. Video shows that Kyle was running, a bystander fired 2 shots into the air behind him, and Rosenbaum chased Kyle into a car lot and cornered him between 2 cars. That's when the video shows, and Richie McGinnis confirms, that Rosenbaum lunged at Kyle and attempted to grab his gun. Kyle fired 3 shots at Rosenbaum, hitting him in the groin, back, and grazing his head. After Kyle shot Rosenbaum, he circled around the car and called his friend to tell him what happened. Richard McGinnis, the witness, takes off his shirt and tries to offer aid to Rosenbaum. After the first shooting, Rittenhouse is standing by the now deceased body of Joseph Rosenbaum. As other rioters start to converge on the scene and call out to get Kyle, Kyle runs to the police. As he is running, Gage Grosskreutz, along with other rioters, follows and records him on video. He asks Kyle where he is going, and Kyle says, "I'm going to get the police." As the rioters start to catch up with Kyle, they begin attacking him from behind as he is running. An unknown rioter punches Kyle in the back of the head, followed by Anthony Huber hitting him in the back of the head with his skateboard. The skateboard, shown in the video, goes flying and Rittenhouse stumbles to the ground. An unknown rider then kicks Kyle while he is on the ground, and then Anthony Huber, having grabbed his skateboard again, hits Kyle in the head with his skateboard, then grabs the barrel of Kyle's rifle. Kyle fires into Anthony Huber's chest, and Huber takes a few steps, then falls to the ground dead. Gage Grosskreutz, who had been following Kyle, then pulls out his gun to shoot Kyle. Kyle sees this and points his gun at Grosskreutz. Grosskreutz raises his hands in the air, then whips the gun around to fire on Kyle, and Kyle shoots him in the right bicep, disarming him. He then aims the gun at the man behind Grosskreutz, and that man puts his hands up and walks away. Kyle gets up and runs to the police down the street with his hands in the air. As he approaches the police car, they ignore him and drive by. Kyle turns himself into the police station in Antioch, Illinois in the next few hours. That night was the final night of riots in Kenosha. Following the shooting and the end of the riots, the politicians swooped in. President Trump came to Kenosha to condemn the riots that he did nothing to stop. And Joe Biden went to Kenosha to praise the accused rapist, Jacob Blake, for getting shot while attempting to kidnap his rape victim's children. Kenosha District Attorney Thomas Binger, attempting to make a name for himself in politics, charged Kyle with murder in a clear political prosecution. The police officer who shot Jacob Blake would be cleared of all wrongdoing. Jacob Blake would himself, on national TV, admit later that he was carrying a knife when he was shot. The city of Kenosha suffered 100 damaged buildings, 40 businesses destroyed, and over $50 million in damage. Now we know exactly what happened the night of the shootings. Let's examine the arguments for why Kyle Rittenhouse is guilty of murder and why they are all wrong. The law, as well as basic morality, states that just because you are somewhere you shouldn't be or doing something you shouldn't be doing, it doesn't mean that you have to submit yourself to the ill will of others. Kyle may have put himself in a dangerous situation, maybe even unlawfully. But just because you may be committing a misdemeanor or petty crime, it doesn't mean you aren't able to defend yourself when your life is threatened. And having a rifle a few months before you're legally permitted to is still just a misdemeanor. We all know that, regardless of how our feelings are about it, prostitution is illegal in the United States. However, we would never argue that a prostitute should not have the right to defend themselves against a violent client, even though they put themselves in an illegal and dangerous situation. At this point, there is no video or witnesses that we have seen or heard from that shows Kyle Rittenhouse acting aggressively towards anyone. Several people showed up at the riot with guns, both rioters and those who were defending the community. And like it or not, carrying a gun in public is a God given right laid out in the Constitution. If you feel threatened by people carrying guns in public who aren't targeting or threatening people, then that's a you problem. And if you feel threatened by people innocently carrying guns, attacking them is not a legal, moral, or smart thing to do. If you believe he went there to kill, then my question to you would be, why didn't he? There was hundreds of rioters on the streets of Kenosha that night who were attempting to cause chaos, yet Kyle didn't shoot any of them. Kyle admits on video that he was pepper sprayed by one of the rioters, but did not attempt to shoot him because he didn't have non lethal means of defense. Not only did he not kill any of the hundreds of rioters on the streets who didn't attack him, he offered medical aid to them. There's video showing him going around asking people if they needed any help. The fact of the matter is, There wasn't a point in time when Kyle wasn't surrounded by at least dozens of people, yet he didn't fire on anybody other than people who directly attacked him as he was attempting to retreat. There's currently zero evidence that he provoked anybody. In fact, the main witness to the first shooting, Richie McGinnis, claims he was walking and Rosenbaum chased him without provocation. Brian Balch, an armed citizen who was walking with Kyle earlier in the night, claims that Joseph Rosenbaum threatened to kill him or Kyle if he got either of them alone. We don't have any video evidence to prove that, but if that is the case, one could understand why Rittenhouse would be fearful of him. And even if I were to concede to the point that Kyle somehow provoked Rosenbaum, it's completely irrelevant. He ran away from Rosenbaum, and Rosenbaum chased him across the parking lot. Self defense is a situational act. One cannot start a fight, then claim self defense. However, if one does start a fight, retreats, and his attacker continues to chase and attack him, then he does have the right to defend himself. From the perspective of the person who was initially aggressed upon, you have the right to defend yourself up until it is necessary. But you cannot then continue to chase and attack someone after they retreat. You can't pull an American History X and curb stomp a dude who isn't a threat to you. Kyle, in both the initial and second encounter, was retreating. Some argue that because self defense is an affirmative defense, meaning justification for committing the alleged crime, it has to be proven by the defense team. In Wisconsin statute, however, affirmative defense does not have to be proven by the defense, but disproven beyond a reasonable doubt by the prosecution.
And what's key here in this case here is that he can only use deadly force if he's threatened with deadly force. It can't just be imminent bodily injury. It has to be great bodily injury and or death. The bottom line here is you can't use a gun in a fist fight.
He used the weapon that was readily available at his disposal, and anyone can take his weapon and use it on him. In fact, in the state of Wisconsin, if someone is grabbing your gun, the legal system considers them to be armed as well.
Second
Doesn't seem to
shooting,
be
he
the
was
case.
literally laying on his ass, firing shots at people 20 feet away who weren't even moving towards him.
He wasn't shooting at random people in a crowd. There's no evidence he was in any way an aggressor. He didn't bring his gun illegally from another state. At either of the times he was attacked, he was not acting in a threatening manner towards anyone, or shooting anyone. In the second instance, even, he was running to go get the police, as he admitted on camera.
He crossed state lines and from Illinois and proceeded to get involved in these shootings that left 2 people dead and 1 person injured.
This is literally the most irrelevant and stupid point ever made. He lived in a border town, and crossing state lines isn't a crime or even something that is considered controversial in any way in any context that currently exists.
After he was let out, he was seen drinking with members of the Proud Boys at a Mount Pleasant bar.
Your bigoted and borderline insane hatred of conservatives does not make him guilty of murder. One of the reasons I think people on the left want Kyle Rittenhouse to be found guilty is something that's pretty plainly spoken by them on a regular basis: the fact that he's a conservative. Any links to the Proud Boys, Trump, or pro police pages have nothing to do with the actual case, since it's so obviously a self defense case. The reason these things are brought up is to try and demonize Kyle to left wing audiences. They view right wing beliefs as a character defect. They want him to be found guilty as revenge against the belief system that they think he has. Were the situation to be reversed, we know that they would defend a left winger who shot a right winger in self defense. The reason I say we know this is the case is because when a Portland area Antifa terrorist shot a right winger completely unprovoked and not in self defense, the left defended and made excuses for that shooter, as well as giving him interviews to spout his bullshit.
In this case, apparently there was definitely a knife, and so that's much worse than a skateboard. So definitely self-defense. So all right wingers agree, right? Self-defense, because you just said it about Rittenhouse, and in this case, it appears to be a more significant case of self-defense. So you're all on Reinhold's side, right?
The left is, very obviously, anti gun. And a major story of a citizen using a gun to defend themselves hurts them in their quest to restrict private gun ownership. Throughout the news and popular culture, you never hear stories of citizens using their guns in self defense, even though, according to the CDC, guns are used for self defense between 500,000 and 3 million times per year, which is between 25 and 150 times more than likely to happen for gun homicides. Rifles, especially, are a target of anti Constitution advocates because of the fact that scarier looking guns are easier to target for restriction. One of the obvious hints into this is that they keep on calling Kyle's rifle an AR-15 style rifle. Kyle had a Smith & Wesson M&P 15. AR-15 rifles are from a different gun company, Colt, which has the exclusive rights to AR-15 design and name brand. Calling this an AR-15 style rifle is like calling a Whopper a McDonald's style burger. It's just nonsense. The reason the term AR-15 style rifle is used is because the AR-15 is the most demonized rifle in America by anti-Constitution activists, and they think that if they continue to demonize that gun specifically, it will help them restrict the ability of citizens to use guns to protect themselves. In 2020, the hard left mobilized to riot and commit domestic terror acts all across the country in places like Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, and more. Many of us have a major city nearby that lost businesses and faced destruction due to the rioting. Their tactics of terrorism, rioting, intimidation, etc., has been a boon to strengthening their influence. Although terror groups like Antifa and BLM are viewed unfavorably by a large percentage of the American public, if you speak ill of BLM, it is a threat to your livelihood because of these intimidation tactics. It is not only crucial, but the most commonly used tactic of the left to strip you of your ability to fight against them through means of censorship and economic intimidation, or canceling. When it comes to their acts of terrorism and rioting, of course it stands to reason that they want to take away your ability to stop them from doing that as well. Kyle Rittenhouse is not the only situation where the left persecutes people who defend themselves. The McCloskeys were also politically persecuted because they used guns to ward away rioters breaking into their property. The Proud Boys, who only fight against Antifa terrorists, are demonized as a white supremacist group with a black leader. President Donald Trump was attacked for clearing rioters out of D.C. Governor Ron DeSantis was attacked for introducing laws to protect the victims of rioters should they need to escape in their vehicle. It's a regular tactic to paint those who are protecting themselves against rioters as somehow evil for doing so, even using stupid arguments such as, the business's insurance will pay for it. As I've been doing throughout the video, insurance companies class riots as a form of terrorism that isn't covered by business insurance. After a lot of thought, I'm in full support of Kyle Rittenhouse in every regard, for a variety of reasons. Number one, as a case of self defense, this couldn't be any more clear. In all three instances, Kyle was attacked by a violent rioter and defended himself. There's literally no disputing this, as the entire thing is on camera. Not only that, but as a gun owner, I can tell you he did exactly as we are told to do in a self defense situation, which is try to escape the situation and only use your weapon if escaping is not an option. Number two, citizens should band together to defend their town from rioters. Rioting is an evil act, and rioters are evil people who destroy and steal either for their own benefit or as an act of terrorism to push their political agenda. In their selfishness, they destroy the hope and dreams of communities and the people living in them, as well as killing people along the way. I feel it is a citizen's duty to defend his community from those who would harm it. For 2 nights in a row, nobody defended Kenosha, and they had $50 million worth of damage done to their city and over 40 businesses destroyed forever. Businesses that people put their blood, sweat, tears, and time into for years and years of their lives. I salute anyone who stood up to the rioters to defend their community. Proud Boys, militia groups, National Guardsmen, police, and the like should all be celebrated, and the rioters who committed violent acts and destruction of property should be stopped, arrested, sent to jail, stripped of their right to vote, and, once their time is served, they can be welcomed back into the communities that they tried to destroy. Number three, after Kyle Rittenhouse shot the three rioters, the riots stopped. The day after, there was some protesting, but no riots and no buildings, businesses, or homes destroyed. Whether or not you support Kyle Rittenhouse or what he did, it looks like shooting the rioters worked. In other instances of riots across the country, riots continued on for weeks and weeks. In Portland, there were over 100 days of rioting because the people in charge just let them do it. And the rioters had no fear of consequences from the government or the citizens. Number 4. The victims of this shooting include a child rapist, a domestic abuser, and an attempted murderer who supports Antifa, a communist terrorist group. Every one of them was an evil person who attended a riot to cause destruction and hurt people. Every one of them attacked an innocent person with the intent to hurt them, and every one of them got what they deserved. Number 5. We in America, if there's anything the current pandemic has shown us, are a bunch of weak, complacent peasants who are afraid to stand up for common sense, much less things we actually believe in. The fact that a child has to go get a gun and defend his community because the people in charge are too cowardly to shows what a joke America and its people have become. The first time a riot started last summer, the National Guard should have been sent to shoot rioters with rubber bullets and spray them with fire hoses. Then we should have scooped them all up to serve long jail sentences. The fact that we as a nation have become so morally adrift that we can't stop rioters or support police officers shows how our cultural leaders have absolutely failed us. There should be no moral question about who is the good guy between a bunch of rioters who attack someone and that person for defending themselves. That's it for the video today. If you want to see some debates and discussions I've done regarding Kyle Rittenhouse, you can check out some of the Kyle Rittenhouse videos on One Man Band TV's YouTube channel. I also plan on doing a discussion about it with Logical Checkmate, so check out his channel if you're interested. Let's go, Brandon.